John and his girlfriend Mary decide to become bank robbers. Mary does the actual robbing at gunpoint inside the banks while John waits outside as the getaway driver. They are initially successful with a string of heists that make headlines, and they become folk heroes. Until one day their luck runs out and they get caught. At trial, the judge condemns Mary to 10 years in prison, while John gets 2 years. However, once they get to their respective prisons, they discover that due to a clerical error, John will be serving 10 years and Mary only 2. Despite of her insistence, John convinces Mary to keep quiet about it. After 2 years, Mary gets out and she continues to visit John faithfully every month, and they exchange letters and phone calls regularly for the remainder of his 10 years. Finally, after he does his time, John gets out and is joyfully reunited with Mary. They get married and move to a different state and start anew, leaving their life of crime behind. They raise a family with children and grandchildren and eventually reach old age after having lived a happy marriage. On their 50th wedding anniversary party, the entire family and friends are gathered. A great celebration is had with many laughs and stories recounting their life together. The conversation turns to the secrets to a happy marriage. One of the guests asks Mary why she decided to stick with John while he was in prison, despite all of the hardships. Mary answers, "Well, you know you have found the one when you finish each other's sentences." It was time for Father John's Saturday night bath, and the young nun, Sister Magdalene, had prepared the bath water and towels just the way the old nun had instructed. Sister Magdalene was also instructed not to look at Father John's nakedness if she could help it, do whatever he told her to do, and pray. The next morning, the old nun asked Sister Magdalene how the Saturday night bath had gone. "Oh, sister," said the young nun dreamily, "I've been saved." "Saved? And how did that come about?" asked the old nun. "Well, when Father John was soaking in the tub, he asked me to wash him. And while I was washing him, he guided my hand down between his legs, where he said the Lord keeps the key to heaven." "Did he now?" said the old nun evenly. Sister Magdalene continued, "And Father John said that if the key to heaven fitted my lock, the portals of heaven would be opened to me, and I would be assured salvation and eternal peace. And then Father John guided his key to heaven into my lock." "Is that a fact?" said the old nun even more evenly. "At first it hurt terribly, but Father John said the pathway to salvation was often painful, and that the glory of God would soon swell my heart with ecstasy. And it did. It felt so good being saved." "That wicked old bastard," said the old nun. "He told me it was Gabriel's horn, and I've been blowing it for 40 years, eh?" A woman from New York was driving through a remote part of Arizona when her car broke down. Luckily, a Native American on horseback came along and offered her a ride to the nearest town. She climbed up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and held on tight to what she thought was the saddle horn so she wouldn't fall off. Every few minutes, the Native American would let out a loud, "Yee-haw!" That echoed through the hills and canyons. When they finally arrived in town, he gave one last "Yee-haw!" before riding off. Puzzled, the service station attendant asked, "Lady, what did you do to get that man so excited?" "Nothing," she replied. "I just held on to the saddle horn." The attendant shook his head and said, "Ma'am, Native Americans don't use saddles." A man goes to his friend's house and knocks on the door. The wife responds and only had a towel on her. The man looks at her and says, "Is your husband here?" She said, "Yes, he's taking a bath." The man, "I'll give you $100 if you drop the towel." Wife, "You are crazy, I would never do that." The man, "I'll give you $250 if you drop it." Wife, "I told you no, what do you want?" The man, "Okay, $500. Wife thinks and says, "Okay, but fast." She drops the towel and the man gives her the $500 and tells her, "Thank you. Tell your husband I'll be back later." The wife walks in and the husband asks who it was. Wife. It was John looking for you, but he says he's coming later. Husband. Oh, did he give you the $500 that he owes me? Guy goes to the doctor for a checkup and gets bad news. You've got a rare disease and you've only got 6 months to live, he is told. The patient is incredulous and tells the doctor he's going to get a second opinion. He finds another doctor a few days later, and after a battery of tests, this doctor gives him the same bad news. Patient is in shock and asks if there's anything he should do. The doctor pauses a moment and says, "Can I give you some non-medical advice?" "Sure, anything, doc. I'm desperate." "Are you religious?" the doctor asks. "Not at all," says the patient. "Well," says the doctor, "I encourage you to join the Mormon Church. Go to every service, get involved with every group and small organization you can, and completely immerse yourself into that religion. I mean, every aspect of it you can." The patient perks up and is feeling hopeful. "Will that extend my life?" "No," says the doctor, "but it'll be the longest fucking 6 months you've ever had." Donald Trump is visiting a school. In one class, he teaches the young students about a new word, tragedy. Then, he asks them to use it in a sentence. One brave girl raises her hand and offers, "If a school bus carrying 20 people drove off of a cliff and killed everyone in it, then that would be a tragedy." "No," Trump responds. "You're close, but that isn't a tragedy. That is what we would call a great loss." A few seconds later, a boy raises his hand and says, "What about if my friend was at a farm, and a farmer drove over him with a tractor? That would be a tragedy." "No," Trump repeats. "That is what we would call an accident, not a tragedy." Anyone else? The entire class is stumped for a while. Then, finally, another boy raises his hand and says, "I know what a tragedy would be. If Donald Trump was flying in his private jet and got hit by a missile, that would definitely be a tragedy." "Exactly," Trump says, pleased. "Now, can you tell the class why exactly that would be a tragedy?" "Well," the boy replies, "it definitely wouldn't be a great loss, and it probably wouldn't be an accident either." Little Johnny is in grade 2 class when the teacher says, "Okay, boys and girls, today we are going to learn a new word." She writes the word on the chalkboard and asks, "Who knows how to say our new word?" Little Johnny, who is sitting in the back, puts his hand up and yells, "Oh, I know, pick me, pick me!" The teacher knows little Johnny is a troublemaker and he will probably say something silly, so she looks for someone else. Little Susie is in the front row holding her hand up patiently and politely. The teacher says, "Yes, Susie, how do we say our new word?" Little Susie takes her time reading the word and says, "Contagious." The teacher says, "Very good, Susie. Now, who can use our new word in a sentence?" Again, little Johnny in the back yells, "Oh, I can! Pick me! Pick me!" The teacher looks for someone else to pick, but no other students have their hands up, so she says, "Okay, Johnny, let's hear your sentence." Little Johnny says, "My dad used that word just yesterday. My mom was mowing the lawn while my dad was sitting on the sun deck drinking a beer. The lawnmower died, and my mom was trying to get it started again, but she kept pulling the cord and it just wouldn't start. My dad watched her and laughed. Then he took a big sip of beer and said to me, 'You know, Johnny, it is going to take that cunt ages to get that lawnmower going again.'" A shipwrecked man washes up onto a deserted beach. He meets a couple that's also stranded there. He and the wife immediately lock eyes and feel the chemistry for some genital bonding. The husband tells the stranger, "Hey, man, see that tall coconut tree over there? We take turns all day climbing it to the top and seeing if any ships are approaching that could rescue us." The stranger replies, "Say no more, friend. I'll take first watch," and he swiftly climbs up the tree. After a few minutes up top, he shouts out, "Hey guys, come on! Stop f***ing down there, I can see you." The married couple, puzzled, shout back in reply, "What?" We're not f***ing. The stranger says, "Oh shit, my bad. It just really looks like it from up here." Over the next 3 hours, the stranger on top of the coconut tree repeats this multiple times, constantly asking the couple below to stop f***ing. The couple, exasperated, continue to deny any f***ing. Finally, he comes down and the husband goes up the tree for his shift. The minute he goes up, the stranger and the wife start going at it. The husband on top of the coconut tree looks down and thinks to himself, "God damn, it does look like they're f***ing down there." A traveling salesman steps off of a bus in a small Midwestern town. He has some time to kill, so he asks the ticket counter clerk what there is to do around the area. The ticket clerk tells him that all the bars are closed because it's Sunday. But if he walks down to the end of the main road, there's an old Indian chief who has the greatest memory in the world. He was bummed out that he couldn't get a drink after his long bus ride, but figured, why not? And set out to see this old man who remembers everything. When he got to the end of the last block on Main Street, he looked over and saw a real-life teepee in a field just off the road. The salesman walked up and stuck his head inside. There sat an ancient man in traditional Indian clothing that looked like OT was straight from a history book. The elder looked up and said, "How?" The salesman nodded and asked, "Do you really remember everything?" To which the old chief replied only, "Yes." The salesman thought about it for a minute and finally asked, "Okay. So what did you have for breakfast on December 9th in 1957? The chief thought for a second and said, "Good morning. I had eggs." Bored to death already, the salesman laughed and left the tent to head to his hotel. About 10 years later, the same salesman ended up in the same one-stop-light town to visit a customer. He remembered the old Indian and wondered if he was still alive. After walking to the end of town, just as he did all those years earlier, he saw the tent was still there. He walked up and again stuck his head in to see the chief sitting exactly as he was a decade ago. In an attempt to mimic the Indian man's greeting from the first time, the salesman politely smiled and said, "How?" After a few seconds, the chief looked up at him with knowing eyes and replied, "Scrambled." An old lady sits on her front porch, rocking away the last days of her long life, when all of a sudden, a fairy godmother appears and informs her that she will be granted 3 wishes. "Well now," says the old lady, "I guess I would like to be really rich." Poof. Her rocking chair turns to solid gold. "And gee, I guess I wouldn't mind being a young, beautiful princess." Poof. She turns into a beautiful young woman. Dash. "Your 3rd wish?" asks the fairy godmother. Just then, the old woman's cat wanders across the porch in front of them. "Ooh, can you change him into a handsome prince?" she asks. Poof. There before her stands a young man more handsome than anyone could possibly imagine. She stares at him, smitten. With a smile that makes her knees weak, he saunters across the porch and whispers in her ear, "Bet you're sorry you had me neutered." Dan. "Why are you sad?" Bob. "I was watching porn and all of a sudden my wife opened the door." Dan. "Okay, she caught you, but is that really such a big deal?" Bob. "I mean, she opened the door in the movie." The husband entered the shower when his wife had just finished washing herself and left the bathroom. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The wife quickly wrapped herself in a towel and ran to open the door. A neighbor, Jack, was standing there. Seeing the woman, he said, "I'll give you $1,000 if you take off the towel." After thinking for 5 to 10 seconds, the woman took off the towel. The neighbor looked at her, gave $1,000, and went his way. The wife again wrapped the towel around herself and returned to the bathroom. "Who rang the bell?" the husband asked. "Jack, our neighbor," she replied. "Oh, great," the husband added. "Did he say anything about the $1,000 he owes me?" A mailman notices a mailbox with the flag up. So, he opens the box and picks up the letter. He glances at it briefly to make sure it is stamped, and then puts it in his bag with his other letters. When he gets back to his office, the letter goes in a big bin with all of the other outgoing mail. He thinks nothing of it, and finishes his day. A few days later, he delivers the exact same letter to the same house that he picked it up from. He glances at the mailing address and observes that it is indeed the same as the return address. Anyone can make a mistake, so the mailman puts the letter in the mailbox so that the customer can readdress it for its proper recipient. He thinks nothing of it and finishes his day. The next day, the mailman sees the same mailbox with the flag up. He opens the box and again sees the same letter. Nothing changed, but with a new stamp on it. The mailman is perplexed and, thinking to save the customer both time and money, decides to ring the doorbell and inquire about the letter. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. The door opens, and standing there is a stout Buddhist monk dressed in traditional garb. "Pardon me, sir," the mailman says, "but you seem to be trying to mail this letter again, and without any changes to the address, it's only going to end up back at your home in a few days." "Ah, my letter. Thank you so much for mailing it the other day. It was greatly appreciated. Please do so again," replies the Buddhist monk. "But, sir," says mailman, "you will only waste a stamp, and this letter will be re-delivered to your home a few days from now." "But that is my intention, dear man," replies the Buddhist monk. You see, reposting is the best way to get karma. Upvote, downvote, report. I was digging a hole in my bee.